Hello guys, this is a brief look at the Logitech G900 Chaos Spectrum's shape. So my purpose with this video is if you're thinking about getting the G900 or you're interested in it, it's a lot of money to put down on a mouse, and especially a mouse that's like, oh, I might not like it. So that's what this video is. I'm just going to be talking about the shape. There are other reviewers out there who are more seasoned FPS gamers than I am, so they can tell you all about the sensor. This is just about the shape. So first of all, it's an ambidextrous shape. It can change the side buttons. It comes with a little box that has extra buttons in it. Something that was important for me was my ring finger rests usually in a little groove right here. And I found with certain mice, like the SteelSeries Rival, which these slope outward at the edges, that made it harder for me to grip with my ring finger, and that resulted in fatigue from using it for extended periods of time. Death Adder was the same way. Compared to this, you can see has a clearly defined ridge here where my ring finger goes under, as does the MX510 here. So the MX510 is the same thing as a G400 shape-wise. The wheel mouse, the Intelli mouse also has that same issue of it kind of slopes outward. So moving on to the side profile, this is a little bit of a flatter mouse. It has more of a hump towards the back, and all these little grooves in here, these honestly it doesn't feel like you're holding a hollow mouse. It's a very lightweight mouse, which is very good, but your fingers probably, even if you palm grip, your fingers won't quite touch that part of the mouse anyway. So I do really like the side profile. I like how there's more of a hump in the back, but it's not so aggressive like the SteelSeries Rival. See, that one has a very high bump in the back. I used to use a Zowie Z-A11, and I really love that shape. If you like that shape, you'll probably like this too. Here's a Razer Death Adder. So this actually has a substantial hump right in the middle. I did not like this at all about that mouse. G502. It's pretty similar, I'd say. Maybe a little bit higher than the G900. The back of it definitely slopes down faster with the G502. I do notice with the G502, the back of my hand drags on my mouse pad more than it does with like the G900. So moving on, we'll take a look at the front here. Side view, back view. I do really like the layout of all, because it's an ambidextrous shape, it feels like a very well balanced mouse. There's lots of feet here for easy gliding. It definitely glides better than most of the mice here. I also really like how, because there's a battery in the back, there's a little bit more weight in the back. It is a slightly above average in terms of weight mouse, probably. I'll weigh it right here. 108 grams. Compare that to this guy is 126. This is like 100. This is like 105, something like that. So it is a little bit heavier. It's not quite as heavy as this, but honestly, you don't really realize it because it has those big feet, so it glides well, and the weight's more in the back. So if you're doing more pivoting movements like this, the more mass is in the back here, so you're not moving that as much as you're moving the lighter end up here. Speaking of lightweight, you can see that scroll wheel is hollow. That was to reduce weight versus like here. You can see I actually have a G500 scroll wheel in this. The weight in the G502 is much more, it feels more concentrated up here. The texture overall, it's a soft, kind of feels like a matte, sweat resistant surface, except for the buttons here. These are more of a glossy, and this silvery part is a bit more sticky. It's a glossy finish too there. Compare that to like the SteelSeries Rival, which has rubber side grips. It still feels like it grips well. Honestly, I have no complaints there. We're talking about the buttons, so this is a big innovation that Logitech's talking about, is typically with a mouse, when you click a button, you're actually bending the plastic to click that button. With this, there's actually a hinge design. There's a pin that goes in here, and that's what this mouse button pivots on. That makes it so you don't really have a weird like bending resistance that you're feeling. It makes the buttons on this feel very free floating almost. it feels like they probably what they're probably supposed to feel like. Omron switches are a clicky, tactile switch that, to me, they feel like their return to their original resting position is a little lazy compared to other switches like Zowie uses Huano switches. Razer, I think they use some TTC switches in some of theirs. Those feel more of a snap with an aggressive return to the original resting position. These in here, these use Omrons, so it's not such a snap, it's more of a click, but there's a more aggressive return to the original position is what I found. There is, I know in one video they talked about there being a little bit of side wobble with the buttons because they are like free floating in design. I do not have that problem at all. I guess if you're like clicking kind of outwardly, I don't know. That's not at all a problem to me. So I love those switches there. The button placement is also, I think they hit the nail on the head here. I don't really have to totally move my thumb to get to them. I can more just pivot my thumb and hit the desired switch. Versus something like the MX510 here. When I grip this, I actually have to physically move I can't reach those just by pivoting. I have to move my thumb entirely. However, they don't feel as crisp as like the G502, the Death Adder, the Rival. They feel a little bit, there's a little bit of a wiggle play in them before you actually click it. I don't know how I feel about that. It's not terrible. They still feel like fairly crisp, but it's definitely not as good as the G502, which is another Logitech product. So overall, I think I love this mouse from what I've used so far. The sensor is not something I'm really going to talk about, but it does use the Pixart PMW3366 sensor, which is the same as this one. One thing that I forgot to mention was the buttons are actually convex on this. So some of you guys who might be used to like the Death Adder, this uses concave buttons. So a lot of people find that comfortable. The SteelSeries Rival here uses more flat buttons. Interestingly enough, the G502 actually has one concave and one convex. I hope this video helped in some way. I hope it helped your purchasing decision if you're going to go drop $150 on one of these right now. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.